Take a second. All right, there we go. Welcome in, everybody, to the Celtics, first edition of the Celtics Power Hour with myself, KJ Doyle, and Ev Singleton, Ev Guy Boston, whatever you know him as. And we're finally doing a show together. I don't know, I forget. After all this time, Ev, I mean, we've never officially had a show together, I don't think, in like
No,
the 5 years we've been doing this.
I think we've been on each other's shows. I think you've come on the post game. Obviously, you filled in for me and do a great job when we can't do that. By the way, we are live on the YouTube channel after every single Celtics game and Patriots game now too. But yeah, we haven't committed to until now. It took us half a decade, but we haven't committed to a show between the two of us. So I'm excited about it. Very excited about it.
Oh my gosh, when you say it like that, half a decade.
Doesn't half a decade sound so much more than 5 years?
Yeah, it's crazy. But you know what's funny? I think this is roughly the 5-year anniversary of us even knowing each other. I think because it's October.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know what the exact day is, but October is when I started because it was that beginning of that first Celtics season. I remember. So the beginning of the Celtics season that year, I should say, not the first one. We weren't here since the Bill Russell days, but the whatever. But no, that season that I started, I think it would have been the first. Was the first or second Isaiah Thomas year? Now I forget. But it was that year was the one in the beginning of that season in October. So this is almost the 5-year mark exactly.
So this was our gift to each other, I guess, right? Starting the Celtics Power Hour here.
What would that be? Like, what's it is it like the 10s, like the paper or something? And the 20s, I don't know, what would it be, titanium or whatever, like tinfoil, tin, I don't know, whatever. 5 years of podcast.
NBA Finals ring?
Right. So, yeah, but 5 years is the podcast one. So anyway, we're starting this. We're basically going to do it, as much as we can every week. We're going to have the Celtics Power Hour where you guys will, be joining us in the chat like the post-game shows, but it'll be less structured, less centered around. I mean, the post-game shows, not that way.
Let's not give me too much credit saying that the post-game show is structured.
Right, but it won't be centered around a game.
Right.
There'll be things that happen that we can talk about more naturally than it won't be right after the game, like Marcus Smart getting suspended, which is something you might not talk about immediately after the game. You might get to eventually because it's a note, but it's more important to focus on the game. But that's something that we'll be talking about here. And I guess that we want to kick things off with today, which is that Shams Charania came out with the news earlier today that Marcus Smart will be serving a 1-game suspension. I know somebody on our Twitter kind of joked in replying to our tweet, is it a suspension or is it a vacation? It's a preseason game. So the Celtics even calling it a suspension is kind of weird because they could just get away with saying, hey, Marcus Smart's not going to play because of rest. And if they wanted to keep it internal, like Ime Udoka said, could have done that pretty easily. Didn't have to call it a suspension. But for whatever reason, the Celtics are Marcus Smart suspended because apparently he was late to their flight to Orlando. I don't know. I mean, it's a weird situation.
So here it is. So yeah, he was, I guess, late to a flight. And now I see on social media, everyone's like, oh, Ime Udoka, he's already, pushing down the brass hammer or whatever the saying is. And I think people are forgetting that it's like Marcus Smart probably wasn't going to play in this preseason game anyways. And if he was, it wouldn't be shocking if he ended up not playing. So it's kind of funny to me that people are going and giving credit to the coach or the organization or anything to be like, oh, they're really laying down the hammer on him. He missed a flight and he's already, taking no BS. I think that this is just hey, you did something wrong. You're not playing on Friday even if you wanted to, but I don't think it's a big, sort of move by, I don't think it's a power move by the coach suspending him.
Why do you think even, like I said, why do you think even suspending him instead of just saying, yeah, he's up for rest and just not even disclosing the reason or anything, trying to cover it up? Why do you think they would so clearly come out and say,
you think there was there questions around why he wasn't in Orlando? Did anyone question that? Or did anyone notice that? He's not here. Why? Because if you get that question, I can totally see why. Okay, well, we can't just, everyone's there. Josh Richardson was there last night.
They were without a lot of guys that came, they were with everybody. So he kind of just was another name in the mix. And I feel like everybody was just oh, okay. I feel almost I don't know, I don't want to put the conspiracy theory hat on, but it just feels weird. The new coach comes in, Ime Udoka, and everybody's talking about the Celtics last season. They were disappointment. Maybe they were undisciplined, whatever you want to say. And now, before the season even starts, Marcus Smart suspended, and it feels like, and a guy that, who knows, like they haven't named the captains yet, has a shot at being a captain.
Yeah,
Will
it's
this
true.
affect it? I don't know. But like, maybe is it that old thing where like you suspend the captain to send a message to the rest of the team? Like, I don't want to go that far with it, but it's like, I don't know. Is there something there? Like, was this a message sending thing? Like, not like maybe so deliberative, like, hey, Marcus, be late to the team flight so we can work this. Like, I don't want to go that deep.
That would
Like a
be
little
conspiracy theory, like central. But
it just does seem weird. Like, it seems like this is something to send a message sort of. And I genuinely wonder, a little part of the conspiracy theory part of my brain thinks, is that what they're doing? Are they trying to get away with that?
it worked if that's the case, because like I said, my first gut reaction was the fact that people on Twitter are like, oh my god, look at what they did, like he doesn't care who you are, he'll suspend you. And it's like, it's a preseason. Like, I didn't think it was a big deal, but maybe I'm too big brain to fall into that trap. Maybe there's a lot of Celtics fans out there being like, oh, Udoka is the best, like Brad would never do this. Or they just want to be upfront about it. Marcus Smart misses a flight, it's team protocol, we would do this for anybody. And yeah, maybe he is sort of saying, it doesn't matter who you are. But I don't know about the conspiracy, because it's just like a waste of a conspiracy to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you get any benefit out of, like, Grant Williams or Romeo Langford Neesmith isn't looking at that going, oh my God, you see what coach did to Smart? Like, no, they probably know if you miss a flight, you're going to get suspended or miss a game anyways. So, I don't know about the conspiracy. I could kind of see it happening. Like, if it's going to be anyone, I feel like Marcus Smart's going to be in on it. But, the weird thing to me is I honestly thought right away, I thought that when I saw you suspended before knowing the reason, I thought it was because, you heard about him and Grant getting into like a verbal altercation, and there's been a couple stories on that and whatnot. I thought that something like that or that was, escalated a little bit more. I was kind of let down to hear that he missed a flight. Like, I was almost looking for some like juice here. Like, this team has some like urge, or they were getting into it with each other. But yeah, either way, like I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I give like a 12% chance to your conspiracy theory that Marcus Smart's in on it. I kind of like it if it's the case, because then it's like, all right, let's see, then they're recognizing a problem of, like, last year they had no leadership, if we can say that. And they're like, oh, let's see if we can stir something up and show that we do have leadership now. So I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. If this was the regular season, does Marcus Smart get suspended for this?
Well, what stinks is that he would have missed a flight to a regular season game
Well,
beforehand.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you book a private jet or something. He can do it. He would get there,
Yeah, I guess No, I mean, probably not. But now that I'm thinking preseason wise, this would make me upset if I was Udoka. If Marcus Smart was like, okay, I'm not playing in this game, I don't care enough to go to that preseason game. We're playing a bad team, we're playing a preseason game, I'm not going to play in it. Now, that can kind of align with, that's going to piss Udoka off, right? That's not just like missing a flight. That's Marcus Smart being like, I'm too good to even travel there. So that could make the most sense when I think about it like that, right? Like he just didn't want to go, and coach is like, dude, you got to go. But if it's a regular season game, to answer your question, yeah, I don't think that's the case. I don't think he misses a game. I think I'd be mad if he missed a game. If he misses a flight and they're like, oh, you're going to sit, I'd be mad if that was regular season.
Yeah, and they can't afford to kind of not throw away regular season games. It's not like you're throwing away the regular season game if you suspend Marcus Smart, but they can afford to risk losing a key piece in a regular season game that they need to win, especially against, hey, let's just say the hypothetical, the Miami Heat, who you're playing this time around. So they, and then they'll find preseason finale. So they couldn't afford to do that. I don't think they would have, and that kind of lends credence to the thought that maybe it's part of sending a message. You can afford to because it's a preseason game and all this stuff. I hate the conspiracy. I love the conspiracy, but I don't want to get too far into it. Ben saying hi to Ev and everybody. What's happening to the Smart? PDMF brought up a good point. And not a great point, but it brings us into something I want to get to. I don't know if I want to say he's high or anything, but do you think that it was something else? Maybe it wasn't just that he's late for the flight, and that's just what they're saying. You mentioned the Grant Williams thing of the altercation between him and Grant. Is there maybe a situation here where the suspension was actually for something they actually don't want to get into? When you talk about Ime Udoka coming out today and saying, we're not going to talk about it. Well, you already talked about it, like, well, I guess Woj leaked it or whatever. But
Yeah.
what's the situation? Is there more to the story there? Was it for that, or was it for something else that they actually don't want to reveal?
That'd be interesting because I mean I could be totally wrong here, but you remember when he like punched a picture in a hotel room and
Yeah.
cut up his hand for a couple
Yeah.
days? You thought that he sprained his wrist or something, right?
Yeah.
So like it wouldn't be the first time we're seeing like a Marcus Smart do something irrational, impulsive, and all of a sudden they're like, all right, let's see if we can at least cover it up for a little while. But to me, I will say, now that that clicked in my brain that Marcus Smart could have been like, oh, I just don't want to go or something like that. Like I could actually see that happening. Like I could totally see Marcus Smart being like, do I have to go, coach?
Right.
And that's not it. So I don't know. I'm kind of on that train, which I guess then it's almost like they're covering up for him. It's the opposite conspiracy. Like if they just
Right.
leaked Marcus Smart didn't want to be with the team, people would throw a freaking hissy fit. So I don't know.
Rather than
I don't
saying
even.
M.A. Belichick,
Yeah.
is this
Yeah.
Belichick sending a message to this play? Yeah, I get, there's the old stories of Belichick, like, Randy Moss shows up late because of a snowstorm with a bunch of other players, and he sends them all home because you got to be on practice on time. So is this M.A. Adoka, laying down the hammer? But you're not into, even outside of that, I want to get back to some of these. You're not into the whole idea that this is M.A. Adoka laying down the hammer. Like, you just think this is.
I think it's one of those like hammers you play with a kid when you're a kid or something. Like I'm not in that locker room being like, oh my God, he suspended Marcus Smart for a preseason game. Can you believe that? Now I'm gonna be shaking in my boots. Like I can't believe
Right.
that's someone's take out there. Like that they're
The
like, oh my God,
squeaky
like
blow up hammer that you throw. Like,
yeah,
squeak,
exactly. Like actually though, like I can't believe there's people, and I saw it all over. Like so, it's not like I'm plucking this out of nowhere. People are like, I love that he's taking charge, and he'll suspend anybody, and Brad would not do that. It's like for a preseason game, like what for the last preseason game, like it's that isn't impressive to me. I love Udoka, Coach U, whatever that, however we're gonna pronounce it there, but I'm not giving him like an additional, pedestal to sit or stand on after suspending someone, regardless of who it is, for a preseason game. Like he could suspend Tatum, and I still wouldn't think it's like a power move. He does that in the regular season, like Belichick sitting Malcolm Butler. Then okay, you want to say Imi Belichick? That's a Super Bowl, and he sits somebody.
Yeah,
Way
I don't
different
know
here.
if he's like that's the thing to me. That is the whole thing to me. If he suspended Jason Tatum for a preseason game, I would think that that's like headline news. Like ESPN might pick that up or something. Like the whole idea that's the whole thing to me is that you could have very easily just said, Marcus, we're going to sit you down. We're going to say it's because of rest. But you didn't say it's because of rest. You let everybody
Why do they
know,
need to do that then? Let me ask you that. So spin it on you. What's the?
because,
Do you think they save that much? Being like, oh, let's lie about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the idea would be that, hey, Marcus, we're just going to list it as rest. We're not going to let anybody think you're suspended, but we're just going to say, yeah, you're resting for this game, but don't do that again and keep it behind closed doors. Instead, you let everybody know, you release to the public, no, he's suspended. We suspended Marcus Smart because he broke the team rules. And I mean, I just think it'd be very easy. Nobody would bat an eye if you said Marcus Smart's not playing this game because of rest, or Jason Tatum, if you use the Jason Tatum hypothetical, is not playing this game because of rest. When you slap the suspended thing on there, you take that big stamp and put it down on Marcus Smart's face and say suspended. That means something. So that's the reason why, even though you're right, it's not a regular season game, and if it was, then we'd be talking about a different thing. But especially with, I mean, you brought up the Jason Tatum hypothetical. If they announced Shams Charania, like, we are suspending Jason Tatum, it's kind of a big deal. I do think that would be a big deal. I wouldn't think
for a preseason game, that still is like, okay, big. And again, I'm not saying that then it's not newsworthy. I'm taking it from the perspective of people looking at Ime Udoka differently. Do you know what I mean? Like it's different than me saying like, oh, it's not worthy of ESPN or it's not worthy of being talked about online. I'm saying the message that we're kind of harping on here, that message to me is like not anything special. Like he's not doing this there's zero consequences to Marcus Smart sitting out of a preseason game to me.
Okay. Well, we'll see. I mean, this is the first kind of big coaching move MA made. And I also question, like, was this only MA? Was it also Brad? Like, because Brad's in a new role now. Does he have more power in that role? Like, who was this totally MA? Like, because we're all giving all the credit to MA and saying this was MA. MA did this. Like, there's other people in the organization too, like that could have oversaw this,
That's a good point too, because especially if it is the rule that say everything we hear is 100% true and there's like no story to this, right? if you miss a flight and that that means you get a 1-game suspension or something like that, right? I mean, I feel like Robert Williams missed like 10 flights, and I guess they're just going to retroactively suspend him at some point when it's relative.
Yeah, right.
But
Time
so
works differently for the Time Lord.
that's
so
true. That's true. But with the Marcus Smart, it's like maybe that's a rule that's in place, and maybe it's not even like maybe Udoka was, hey guys, can we say this is rest? And someone up there, Brad Stevens, or even if it goes further than that, is like, nah, rule's a rule, man.
Yeah, that's the thing is we've heard Ime speak on it, but we haven't necessarily heard that it was his decision. We haven't heard his decision it was. So I will say, I was we got the conspiracy going. BP is still with the conspiracy talk. Ime missing media day, saying even it could affect me. All this stuff. We're gonna get into the COVID stuff. Birkin saying it could be anything. Literally, rules apply to everyone, and that's absolutely true. Like and look, Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. I think if it was either of those two, it would be a bigger deal. But if it's Marcus Smart, it's like it's a little bit of a deal. It's not a big deal, but it's it's kind of a deal. So I think that's important to remember too. I did want to ask you this though. If let's assume that this no conspiracy. This is on the face of it. Marcus Smart was suspended for this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think that affects? We talked about the captain thing already. Do you think that might affect? Well, Ime's deciding who the captain's going to be. His potential candidacy for that spot. Like, could this be potentially lose him that C on his chest? And should it?
If it's at all close to my conspiracy, right, with Marcus Smart just like knowingly, intentionally didn't want to take the plane or go to the plane for whatever reason, then yeah, I mean that you can't be a captain and be the guy that's like, oh, I'm not playing tonight, I'm too good for that game. But if he missed a plane because he was stuck in traffic or, set an alarm for PM when it should have been AM, something that's like explainable like that, or, understandable, I should say, then I think that he's done way more captain worthy in his tenure here than that would sort of, that's not the biggest blemish on a pretty good body of work in terms of captainship, like a petition, I guess. So I think again, like it depends. There's two sides of it. If we're taking it as a fact that he just missed a flight and that's it, then I would say the far side of if he did it on purpose, I think that that's a pretty big like blemish on his reputation, because that's like you don't want to do that. But if he honestly missed it and everyone's hit traffic or overslept, everyone's done that. Like it's not a recurring thing. So then hey, okay, let's look past it. Just don't let it happen again.
Yeah, and Rosin saying he was just joking. He doesn't think it's a big deal. He's joking about the Ime Belichick thing. We loved it, Rosin. Stick with it. Ime Belichick, make the shirts, make the T-shirts now. But I will say that as much as we maybe do joke about this and whatever, Ime Belichick. I want to see it. This like we said, this is a preseason game. I want to see, does he do stuff like this in the regular season? Like if I don't know, someone.
I don't want to have this scenario in the regular season.
I mean, I don't either. But
I know
there'll be other ways it could manifest itself. Will Ime Udoka become somewhat of a disciplinarian, somewhat of a drill sergeant, very strict? Will he run a tight ship? Is that what the type of coach that he's going to be? And will that work with this Celtics roster?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to see it, because I'd love to, and I know that that's just like a, not exactly what you mean, but I'd rather have no scenarios where this even comes up, right? But I'd be curious. I'd think that's a good word to use. Like, I'd be curious to see if Marcus Smart were to miss another flight, or, if it has anything to do with, like, is now that inflatable hammer we talked about, is that a real hammer? That's what I'll say.
Right. And Birkin saying, love this decision. If it was Game 7 of the NBA Finals, should have had the same consequence.
Oh, man, Birkin's fired up.
Yeah, are you suspending Marcus Smart for Game 7 for this? He can't play. Is that what we're like?
If he didn't want to go to the NBA Finals, like my other conspiracy, then I'm with Birkin here. But I mean, I think that this is so drastically dependent on the fact that it's a preseason game. Like, I'm so in that boat. I think that's like the first thing, my first gut reaction that I even said to you, right? So like this is such a weird. I don't even know if this is the right way to say it, but this is like a weird flex out of the Celtics to me. Like, I don't think that this should be a true noteworthy thing. It's like, it's a preseason game, and if you missed a flight, then okay, then he's suspended. But let's not get carried away saying that, they have a no BS tolerance, or no, they don't tolerate BS in that building. It's like, all right, buddy, come on. It's a
Right.
preseason game.
And Ben making a good point, and he's talking about soccer, football in England, but the same is true about basketball. Players are in charge. Coaches don't dare upset the star players. They have to too much money, and become unmanageable. And that's something you've heard a lot about basketball players and NBA players, and the coaches have no power anymore. It's all about the star players. So, do you worry that if MA does decide to run this tight ship, that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown start to say, I liked this MA guy at first, but he's kind of an a-hole. Like now he's telling me, he's acting like he can tell me what to do and stuff. I thought it was a player's coach. He's a former player. Like I thought he was gonna, treat me well and we're gonna laugh it up all the time. And now he's trying to, boss me around, and it's so depressing to be around here. Like, do you worry that if MA decides to do it that way, it's not going to be good for the star players on the Celtics?
I would say that I hope that they knew what they were getting, or who they were getting into bed with, because they both had strong opinions about bringing him in. It's not like he hasn't coached alongside them before. I mean, they do know the type of coach that he is. They're not just relying on the rumors and stuff that the outside world is. So I don't think that. I guess I should say I really hope that that's not going to be a possibility, because that would be sort of a scenario where it's like they were so excited because they knew this guy, but did they really know him? And all of a sudden it's like a big deal. And is he trying to get a little power happy being a new coach and everything like that? I hope that's not the case. But I will say, if this is all true, what we're hearing about, missing a flight and just getting suspended, and say it's a rule, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are looking at that being like, okay, well, that's just a black and white answer. Marcus Smart broke the rule. He's suffering the consequences that we're all aware of. It's a little bit different if, and this is just a weird scenario, but if Ime was just like, oh, Marcus Smart, you're in the wrong seat on the plane, I'm suspending you. Then all of a sudden you're like, and that's obviously crazy hypothetical, but then it's like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are like, okay, we're not sure, this guy's, power tripping and all this. It's like, if Marcus Smart did just genuinely break a rule, I don't think that it's going to impact Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum much. But if it starts getting into a more realistic scenario, is if a guy's a little bit late and they have to hold a plane for him, or say he's 3 times in a row late to practice whenever they do practice in the season, and he can start being the difference between a hard, good hard coach, or a hardo type coach, that's where, this conversation could, I guess, be picked up. And it's like, okay, is he being too a Thibodeau type thing? You know what I mean? It's never going to be good enough. If he gets to that sort of oh yeah, you played good defense, but you crushed your feet once, and it's like, well, did the guy score? No.
And what's the rap on Thibodeau? It's that he's a good coach. He comes in and he wins right away, but then his players start to get tired of him yapping in their ear all the time. Like, this guy's wearing on me, and he wears out his welcome places.
Yeah. So I do hope that this is just genuinely a okay, well, Marcus Smart, just like if you rob a bank, you're gonna go to jail. No one out here is being like, oh my God, are you kidding me? That's a crazy rule. No, you just know, how things result. So maybe that's how I'm hoping, if this is the truth, that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are looking at this. They're not like, oh, he came down too hard on him.
All right, you guys heard it. Go ahead, it's gear. You better clip that. Ev says throw Marcus Smart in jail. That's what he said because he missed the. No, I'm kidding. Last thing before we move on, Birkin saying my captains are Jalen and Jabari Parker. Jabari Parker for team captain. And Andrew, I think being playful about the Jabari Parker being after captain. Theo Pinson and Ines Cantor should be the captains. I hope that's a joke at least. Anyway, the captain suggestions getting a little wild there, I think. Maybe just a tad bit. Captains, I don't know if we have time to get to it today. Maybe something we get to once they're named on the next episode. Maybe we talk about it more then. But we are going to move on a little bit to the COVID issues the Celtics have been dealing with. Jaylen Brown out with COVID, missing this game. Should be back for the season opener. I think they may even use the word definitely going to be back for that season opener. Al Horford's status, a little bit more uncertain, looking less likely for him. We know the COVID issues they had last year. It plagued them. It really killed them last year, some would say.
Yeah.
And already this year, dealing with it in the preseason, if this continues, it's not going to be good for Boston. I mean, they have more depth this year, but just the fact that it's already hitting them, and we're not even at game 1 yet, that's discouraging. A very bad sign for them moving forward into the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what you want to hear, and I will say you talk about the depth, right? You bring that up, and that's so true. They're more apt to be able to have that next man up sort of fill in role this year, but not when, one of your top two guys is out, and not when one of those new guys that you brought in to provide depth is out. So I think it's very important, to note the two guys that do have the trouble with COVID now. You know what I mean? It's not like if it was and I don't, God forbid this happens to them, but like a Romeo Langford or an Aaron Nesmith, two guys that are showing that they're going to be important to this team, most likely this year. I think that that's obviously less important because you do have a deeper team that you can now fill in where that depth is now lacked. But when you just start taking off your top end talent, and top end talent is missing games like we saw last year, that's the problem to me, because you don't have depth that replaces Jaylen Brown, and you really don't have depth that replaces even Al Horford. So it's like
Yeah.
they're deeper, but you can combine the 8th, ninth, and 10th man into one player, and they're still not as good for your team as Jaylen Brown is.
Right. And I think with hopefully, like we said, Jalen will be back, and we won't have to worry about that. But the fact that they do have this better depth is a little encouraging to me. You look at you say there's no real place for Allen. There's not, but at least you have a big that can kind of space the floor in Juan Hernangomez now, and at least you have Robert Williams there, who to me projects as your starting center, and we'll see how it all plays out. But I it's hard to say this is a sign of things to come, because who knows? Who has any idea how this is going to affect the team moving forward? If they get through the next week and a half and don't have any more COVID cases, then in theory, they should be fine. Like, it wouldn't have spread from Horford and Jalen to other
Mm-hmm.
players on the team. You can get back rolling, you get back going. So if this is just a matter of couple one-off cases, it's not going to spread anywhere else on the team, well, they're going to isolate and we'll be okay, great. If this is not just the one-off cases and this is happening to the Celtics because of them not taking protocol seriously, them going out too much, them not doing the things they're supposed to be doing, then that's the problem. Like, and I don't know if that's the case or not. There were so many rumors last year, a lot of which came on Tristan Thompson, who's not on the team anymore. So you have to wonder if this starts to pick up again. If Jason Tatum gets a case of COVID again, and he has to sit out a couple weeks, and then he's not the same once he comes back, then I think it's almost, I don't want to say fair, because if there's no reporting out there that they were doing something wrong, then it might be a little unfair to just say that they were. But it's going to start to raise some eyebrows, and there are going to be some people in this town that are going to look at the team and they're going to say, this isn't just a coincidence. They're probably being irresponsible, and they're probably doing this to themselves. And if that is the case, then people have every right to be frustrated, because this team could be a lot better if they didn't continuously run into this. I wish COVID was over and Jason Tatum could go out to the club and Jaylen Brown could do whatever he wants to do in his free time. He has a lot of great things in his free time. Whatever these guys want to do. I'm not disparaging anything that these guys want to do. We all want to do fun stuff. I'm not saying go to the club disparagingly. Go to the club if you want to go to the club. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, if you're doing that now and it's costing the team games and wins, and you're falling to another season where you're going to be the 7th or 8th seed, then you don't be surprised when the fans stop going to the games or start booing you or whatever they're going to do, because you just can't do that. You can't do that in today's age and with everything that's going on, if your main goal is to be a great team.
Yeah, if they have a year like last year in terms of missing days and stuff, then it's like, okay, what are we doing here that makes it so, this is 2 years in a row now, by far and away, you have the most days lost due to COVID. And then I don't think that now. Like, I know you're just throwing that out there as like thought, like your thought.
No, and people give them a pass for that last year. It's like, well, they missed the most days due to COVID. COVID hit them the hardest. They deserve a break. If that happens again, like you're saying, like, what's up?
Then I look at it as, okay, these are young kids in cold Boston in the winter. They go to Miami for a road game and they're like, holy crap, like let's have fun. Like this is the life, you know what I mean? Like then all of a sudden I start piecing puzzle pieces together, because that what happened last year can't, like it shouldn't happen again. You know what I mean? Like, we should have more of it should be understood more what to do, what not to do, and protocols in place, everything like that. Like, it should just alone, given the time and the learnings from things, result in way less of COVID impacting your team and at the Celtics. And again, we don't know if this is gonna happen. Like, it sucks that it's two guys, and two of the guys that are more towards the top of your team that's happened to. It's still only two. Who knows? Maybe all of a sudden, halfway through the year, we're looking back going, wow, it's still only those two incidents. We can't predict the future, but I think it's valid to say if another season like last year would occur, it's like, what the hell's going on here? Like, come on, that's it's not happening at this rate to other teams, type of thing. Like, what are you guys doing?
Right. And if that does happen, then hey, great, fantastic. That's what we've all wanted. If they do miss more games, they should be better off, like in theory, because when you look at the talent around them, Aaron Nesmith has another year under his belt. Payton Pritchard has another year under his belt. Romeo Langford's healthy to start the season, which he wasn't last year. And is Romeo going to be a key piece? I don't know. I hope so. I mean, Romeo, to me, I mean, he's shown some stuff from preseason. He's a really athletic, good defender. Like, I hope they get something out of Romeo Langford. But throw him in the mix. You signed Dennis Schroeder now. You have Josh Richardson. So you have guys that can start games for you off the bench, which is very, very important. It's going to be key if you're missing players. But that'll be great if you want to be like the 5 or the 6 seed, which is what they were close to being last year. Yeah. If you want to be top 4, then you need to be fully healthy for as much of the season as you possibly can be. And you can't afford to miss games that you otherwise could have played if it's, because of COVID. And I don't know if it's avoidable or unavoidable based on what they're doing. But if it's avoidable, you have to avoid it at all costs. Right. And, I think that if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are all out there and Marcus Smart and you have Dennis Schroeder, then they can be a top 4 team. It's just a matter of staying on the court. And if you miss games due to injuries, obviously that's different. But, I would hope that they're not doing anything that would, cost them that chance, because they can be really good. They have the depth this year and everything that comes along with it to be a good team.
They do. And again, knock on wood, like, injuries, and even if you're, responsibly going about, abiding by COVID protocol and whatnot, so I'll throw injuries and then getting COVID or testing positive for it. Even if you're not doing anything like extracurricular to get it or anything like that, those things you can't prevent. If you can lay down at night, as the Celtics, if the Celtics were to be a person, you lay down at night and say, hey, we did everything we could. We had, another non-healthy year due to injury or due to COVID, but we didn't do anything that could have caused this. And obviously you're not going to do things to cause injury, but I guess with COVID, it's like if they lay down and go, oh my God, why did the whole team go out in Miami after the game? Like, that kind of sucked, because now all of a sudden we're sitting here with our in our hands, being like, well, we kind of pissed away probably a couple weeks of the season. So I think that it's all about, I guess, being able to, like I said, you lay your head down on your pillow at night knowing that you're doing all you can do. Then there's not much more to that. Like, you know what I mean? We can't ask these guys to be superhuman and have the immune systems of Superman. So injuries and, accidentally getting, I guess I shouldn't say accidental, but getting COVID if you're going out to a club and that type of thing, then right. Are two, I guess, separate things, because I just don't want to see a sort of game allotment missed like we saw last year and be like, okay, well, what's the story here? Because me, you, everyone's going to start reading into it more, and that's where sort of dysfunction comes from, So I think we just hope that isn't the case.
All right, Ev, we'll get into maybe more on that next time. Who knows? Let's move on to the roster, because this is the final preseason game tomorrow night, and after that, they're probably going to have to make some cuts. We've already seen teams around the NBA make cuts already. I think they're probably not, because they have a lot of players out, so they need enough to field a team for the preseason, as crazy as that is. But, as far as names that could potentially be on the chopping block, I'll give you the roster bubble players right now. Garrison Matthews, I'll throw Bruno Fernando in there, even though his contract's guaranteed. Who knows what they could do with him? Theo Pinson, Ryan Archie-Diacono, Jabari Parker, and that's pretty much it. It's those 5 guys. I think I hit all those 5 guys. If I missed someone, I apologize. But those are pretty much the 5 guys that are on the bubble. And I think they're all fighting for one spot. So who of those 5 are you taking right now?
I think, and it sucks because like I started to like some of these guys just watching them. I guess even last night, like Garrison Matthews, I liked how he looked and whatnot. But I've been
So I
pretty
should hold
big.
on. Let me just correct this up. The 2 spots, because Bruno Fernando is he's kind of technically guaranteed.
Technically would be.
Yeah, so there's 5 guys for 2 spots, and again, it's Matthews, Garrison Matthews, Bruno Fernando, Theo Pinson, Archie Diacono, and Jabari Parker. And Sam Hauser, he's on the 2-way deal, so he's not going to be on the 15-man roster. But it's those 5 for 2 spots, and I think there's some others. Basketball Reference doesn't list them right now. I think there's some others technically still are in the mix there. But let's go with those 5 because I think, I think we both know who we're going to say here.
Well, if we were to do like a chopping block and we cut them out one by one, Archie Diacono, like that dude has done nothing for me. Like I don't know, and it's nothing against him. Like I've only watched him a little bit, but I've gotten a little bit excited seeing Garrison Matthews play. I've got, you mentioned Sam Hauser. He doesn't really totally apply to this, but I got excited watching him play. Theo Pinson comes in, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm glued to this guy. Like he's playing well, whatnot. Archie, whatever. I pronounced it right once. That's good enough already. Yeah. Archie, whatever.
Yeah.
If he's like gone to like, he's the only guy probably on the team that has done absolutely nothing. To me, like he is such a nothing to me. So I feel bad for him because he's almost not even in the question to me. But to me, I think and I've been riding him for I wouldn't say he's like one of my guys, but he's definitely someone I want to see play more and more, and that's Jabari. Like I think that it's too early, and I know that Jabari's had a lot of chances, but it's still to me too early to give up on what Jabari Parker could be or how he could help your team. Like that game last night, until they put Jabari back in, I know he didn't, do the best. They hit some threes and whatnot, but they had no scorers out there at one point in the fourth quarter last night against the Magic. Jabari at least comes in, and as a fan, you can go, you know what? Take a deep breath. At least someone can put the ball in the hoop. And that's something we've struggled with from the Celtics bench and, at times when Tatum or Brown are off the court. And I'm not saying he's up there with them in that level, and I know they got other guys, but it kills me when I look at the 5 guys on the floor and say, oh my God, I don't want any of those guys even trying to score. And we've seen that the last couple of years. So out of all the names you mentioned, I think Jabari is sort of my surefire, and it's funny because I don't think he is I think he probably is a lot of people's picks, but I don't think he's a surefire 100% lock it in, making the roster type guy, but I think he should be because when he plays, he looks good on offense. I think you know what you're getting on defense. And I don't want to say I'm high on Jabari, but I'm high on just saying, hey, give him a little bit more minute. Like, see if he can make something happen. There's very few guys in the team that you could say, hey, you never know, he could go off. I think Jabari can do that to a smaller degree, and if we're saying go off ability, but compared to like the names that we're mentioning here, like, you kidding me? Jabari Parker or Archie Giannakmano? Like, give me a break, right? So that's sort of my definite out of that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably going to be Bruno and Jabari just because that's the easiest. I mean, Bruno's, I know that people kind of make a big deal out of this of like, well, you can just cut him. It's like $700,000 or it's whatever else. It's like, well, that's important to these teams if you can cut the other guy for nothing. So, I mean, and I think the end of the roster, when you're talking about that kind of thing, you're more considering the money than you are the player because, if the money's the same, you'll pick whoever, the best players if it's roughly the same. But when you talk about the 15th guy, it's like that guy's never going to play. So who cares? Like, it doesn't really matter. So, but for the Jabari situation, you're talking about a guy like kind of how you're pointing out that he can give you 10 points every 10 games, 15 games. I don't know. Pick a number.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, but one thing I want to say on Jabari too, and this kind of is going to roll into probably somewhat of what you're saying too, but my biggest thing about him, and I said it before, when Jabari's playing in these garbage time minutes or playing with these bench guys, like, he doesn't look like one of them to me. He looks like he's way better with the ball, not defensively, but with the ball and everything. So that's another sort of like, okay, he passes the eye test too. Like, I'm not just going on, oh, he's a former number 2 pick or anything like that. It's like, I watch, and though he has not lived up to what he should have been, he seems better than Ryan Arcidiacono to me.
Arcidiacono, No, yeah, but this is the thing about Jabari is like I think the team is going to be good enough defensively that like you don't need just some stud defender down there. If you have a guy in Jabari, like to me the 15th guy in the roster, you'd much rather him be able to score at a decent level than defend at a decent level because if he can score at a decent level, he can give you, like I said, 10 points every 10 games, 15 games, whatever it is. If you can defend decent enough, well, if I need you to go get a stop, you still can't give me a stop. It's not like Theo Pinson's getting you a stop against Kevin Durant or anything like that. It's not going to happen. But Jabari Parker, he might be able to get you a bucket when you need it. He did so in the Warriors game last year. We saw that. He got a lot of key buckets down the stretch there. So I don't know. I mean, the weird thing about that spot is that they can really go anywhere. And I do wonder, like, will Ime just say, I know Theo Pinson from being with the Nets and I like him. So, I think Theo Pinson's a good locker room guy. I want to keep him around or because he's a good defender or whatever else. Like, that would, I don't know. This is so weird. Does it matter if their friendships on the team? You remember the whole thing of like Tatum being friends with Javonte Green and hating to see him leave. And there's so many of those things on the team. Like, it doesn't matter whoever these guys are closest with. Like, I don't know. They could go with any number of things in this game. If you're just evaluating it on performance so far this preseason, I think it's obvious that as much as we thought about, could they bring in Avery Bradley or something like and take Jabari's spot because we looked at that 15th spot all offseason. It's like, well, they can always cut Jabari and bring someone else in. So there's always the opportunity to get better there. Jabari's come in, the competition's been weak, and he's played well. Like, he played well the other night. So there's nothing that he's done to lose that spot. And it's his for now. And the frustrating thing is that I wish they had done more to improve that spot in the meantime. I wish they had gone out and signed Avery Bradley or someone else because once the regular season rolls around, his contract's guaranteed. So you can't go back and cut him now later and pick someone else up. Like, they should have done more to improve that spot now. And I'm not talking about the 15th spot. Bring someone in who's better than, Bruno Fernando and who's better than, I don't know, Romeo Langford or whoever else you want to say who can play above those guys in your rotation. Bring someone in that actually can give you valuable minutes as opposed to, Jabari. I'm not saying Jabari can't do that, but like as opposed to bringing in these kind of retreads and, roster fodder really with like, Garrison Matthews, who couldn't find a spot or Ryan Arcidiacono. To me, they didn't actually bring in anybody that was actually going to compete. They were just like, whatever, training camp invites to whoever will take them. They didn't want to do that thing. And maybe it's because they like Jabari. I don't know. If they do, I'm not going to disparage them.
It could be like last night when they started to like blow the lead. And I get it. That's a preseason game. Again, like it's the third preseason game, probably the least sexy of them all, I guess. But I was like, why isn't Jabari playing like when they were losing, they're starting to blow it and whatnot? And then someone in the chat, on the post game show said, I think it's because they just saw what they need to see out of Jabari. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't fighting for a spot. So they put in Theo Pinson, they put in Sam Hauser, they put in Garrison Matthews and Archa, and Bruno. It's like they put those guys in because they, I think, already know that Jabari's on this team. But I think, like, I know what you're saying. Like, I think an Avery Bradley is a better caliber player than definitely Jabari as of right now and stuff. But I still do think, like, there's potential and there's potential reward, I should say, from trying to work with Jabari Parker and figure out how he can actually fit and contribute to this team. Like, I know we're talking about the 15th spot here, but again, when he plays with those other sort of 15th spot guys, whether they're on the Celtics on his team or playing against guys, he looks so much better than them. So I wish that they gave him a little bit of a shot, like similar to this. And this is, I don't know, I might be getting ahead of myself here, but like Enes Kanter, when they play him, it's like you're playing him for like a specific-ish reason. You're gonna quickly tell, is he on tonight? Can he make a difference tonight? And if not, then his minutes are gonna be pretty limited in that game. But you gave him that chance, right? Jabari, you could say, hey, let's put him in there with the second unit. Is he on tonight? If he's on, then great, let's roll with him. Does he look like he stinks? Like, then okay, then we'll sit him. Like it's to me, it's like Jabari's minutes worthy and should be getting a chance, but it's like he's competing for the bottom spot on the roster now. It's kind of weird to me. Like I believe in him still a little bit, And
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish the Celtics did too.
Ben saying Jabari a late bloomer. That number 2 overall pick finally going to pay off for the Milwaukee Bucks. We got to see. A couple comments about Bruno. People saying, "Hey, what's up?" By the way, what's up, everybody in the chat? Birkin saying Bruno looking good. Next Leon Poe. Antonio also saying he likes Bruno. So what do you think of? I mean, I don't know. Besides being crossed up by RJ Hampton, has Bruno shown you anything actually? Interesting so far in the preseason. I mean, I think for most people, he was just kind of a throw-in. And I will say this, before I let you go, my big point on Bruno was like he was going to be the third center behind Robert Williams and Al Horford, and now they even brought in, Juan Hernangomez, who I don't know if he's going to totally play center, but can play a little bit big down there. So it's like he's going to be the third or fourth big on the roster, whatever you want to say. Like to me, you can throw almost anyone into that, and like. Bruno Fernando is the third big. Like, that's fine. But, I mean, has he actually shown you anything, I don't know, more than that or enough that you actually, like, hey, this Bruno Fernando guy, he can kind of play?
Not in, like, crunch time minutes or anything like that. Like, he hasn't impressed me, really. But I do like the idea of having that. Like, he's built right now. He's, like, 23, 24, something like that, right? He's muscular. He's the type of player that, like, I think, he could just start scratching the surface and realize, like, oh, you know what, I can actually play here. And I see Antonio saying, like, energy. Like, I like that type of player because he is young. If he's 28 years old and you're like, oh, that's our energy guy, then it's like, okay, well, then he's our energy guy forever. I don't mind Bruno being a part of this team if, he's going to get better and better. And I have seen him look good at times. I've seen him also not look so great, but he seems like he can make some plays close to the basket on both sides, so I'll give him that. But the only thing that I'll say about him, and I think I said this before in my stream, so if anyone's in here has probably heard it before, but the thing I love about the centers we have right now is they're all so different. I don't know, like, what that Bruno sort of, oh, this is what he's special at. So you have Cantor, obviously. We know what he does. Al Horford's kind of your stretch the floor type center. Robert Williams is that absolute athletic freak. Is Bruno Fernando able to develop, or does he have some hidden sort of, hey, you know what? He could be part of this, make it a three-headed, make it a four-headed monster now of big men that you can roll out there because he's got that special talent. And I don't know, maybe, he is a little bit smaller than Cantor and Horford. So maybe he can move laterally better. Like, I don't know what that is, but the Celtics have very strategically put together their centers, I feel like, even though it looks like they just have the same centers they had 2 or 3 years ago. But I think this is a very strategic sort of big man grouping. And if Bruno can show me that, hey, I got something special that I can do, and I say special, I mean like a distinguishing thing, like not like, oh, I got potential or anything like that. Like, I think that then it's like, then we could talk about, okay, well, you know what, he's worth being here. But until then, I don't know if he's not going to see much time. He hasn't been overly impressive, but I haven't been like underwhelmed by him. Like I didn't have high expectations for him to begin with, and I've liked what I've seen. I haven't loved what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. And Burke can say in the chat, by the way, he's been hating on Josh Richardson for months.
Yeah, that's my guy too. I'm so high on Josh Richardson.
Yeah, Birkin, we think you're wrong, man. We'll bet you on that too. I think you're wrong about Josh Richardson. And I mentioned before, a bunch of people saying hi in the chat. Phil, Ev, can you say Ryan's last name again, please?
Yeah, Ryan Archin Macchiato Caramel Macchiato.
I like that. It just clean up to Ryan Caramel Macchiato. That's pretty good. Get himself a sponsorship if he could ever make a shot. But Birkin also saying Bruno Howard 2.0. Do you know what he means? Is he saying Dwight Howard?
Dwight?
Like
I could see that.
I
could see. No, I could see him saying that. I'm not saying I could see it happening. I could see where he's getting that from. They kind of are similar size stature. I don't think that
like Sixers Dwight Howard. I don't know. Maybe
there you go, yeah.
Lakers Dwight Howard. Like now, yeah, sure, is backup. But Dwight Howard in his prime was an all-star. We're not talking about that very much. But I want to give Lan some run here too, asking how do we feel about how the team's going to start? Do we feel like injuries and all that stuff is going to create a slow start for them? What do you think, Ev?
I think if it was flipped and Jalen was going to be out opening night or something like that, I think we have a bigger issue. And I'm not breaking any news there. Like, everyone understands that. I think, and I think that they can get by without Al. I think obviously some like the knee contusion we had from Schroeder, I think that's just like, I mean, that's not going to be an issue. So other than like the COVID issue, I think that they can get by without Al. I think that Al has, I'll be honest, has impressed me. Like I said time and time again that they brought Al in to be a presence, not a player. I think that he clearly has a lot of player left in him. So good for him. But I don't think him being out is going to completely kill like the start of the year. It's not going to help them, obviously. Like it would definitely be better if Al Horford was here for the start of the year. But as long as this team's going to have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and then the majority of these, new depth guys like Dennis Schroeder, they'll have, Marcus Smart if he doesn't miss the flight. They'll have Nesmith and Langford, who seemingly maybe have taken a little bit of a step up. I hope that continues. I think that, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown can beat a lot of teams in this league with a supporting cast. I think they have a good supporting cast even without Al Horford. A better supporting cast, I should say, than last year.
All right, we're taking some audibles here. We are men of the people. Better call Kaz saying I think Nesmith will have a great year. Antonio asking if we already talked about Nesmith yet already. So everybody wants to talk about Nesmith. Birkin said before, he told me to get myself mentally prepared for Romeo starting this year. And
Birkin's been saying that for
saying
years.
Again, I predict Romeo starts next to Marcus opening night. So, it's Gear jumping on the bandwagon too. If you had to put one in the starting lineup, you put Romeo or Nesmith. So it's Gear. I think that's too easy for Ev, so I'm going to change it up on him. Okay, so Ev, Romeo and Nesmith. These guys, to back-to-back years, 14th picks. Nesmith came along, and I think a lot of people like him better because he's a better shooter, better scorer. He showed a lot in the summer league. And Romeo, he's never gotten the playing time. He was injured a lot of last season. So project these guys out for me. I mean, because I think that the whole idea is you had lottery picks for both these guys, and you wanted those lottery picks to be higher. They weren't. So these are the two guys you ended up with. And I think that it's letting the Celtics off the hook just a little bit to say that they're fine with what these guys project to become. I think that one of these guys needs to become a real star for them. And Romeo seems a lot further away from that than Nesmith, at least a real starter for them. And, I wonder what you're going to get from these guys this year and moving forward. So give me just your current thoughts on Romeo and Nesmith, because it seems like the people really, that's what they really want to talk about right now. So we're going to give it to them. Give me your thoughts on those two guys and how they project going forward here, maybe just for this season.
So I think this year, Nesmith sort of cements himself as that guy's checking in to every single game. He's checking in regularly. He's going to be a player. And I think that's even beyond or with his performance aside. Like, I think that this team and their strategy is ready to say, hey, Aaron, go play basketball. You know what I mean? Like we'll accept some mistakes and whatnot. Like, he's not going to do what happened last year where he plays and then doesn't play for 16 games and comes back and everyone's thinking that he like slept with Brad Stevens' wife or something because it's no reason why he's not playing.
He didn't sleep with Brad Stevens' wife. We're not breaking news here.
I didn't say it, KJ, you did. But but no, it's like to me, he's going to now be more and more consistent, and that's going to be great because the kid earned minutes last year doing what he's not like good at or what he's not known for. Like, he earned minutes being sort of a hustle guy, keeping plays alive, getting loose balls, getting offensive rebounds. He really didn't shoot all that well. Maybe you could say at the end of the year he did. So all he needs is that second shoe to fall, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I earned minutes doing this sort of like, this gritty type play and keeping plays alive. If all I now do is the easy part, which is what I'm good at, I just need it to click, then all of a sudden I think he's an instrumental role player, and I don't want to get too like high on him, but that number 2 spot in the starting lineup, that starting lineup still has some flexibility to it based on how we've seen some guys play. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Aaron Nesmith ends up or starts some games. I don't know if he's totally there yet. I don't want to throw him to the fire, but I think that he's going to be that sort of, hey, this guy took a step up. Like, this is a guy that now contributes to the team. Romeo, I think, has all the potential in the world to do that. Like, I wouldn't, if someone's like, oh, by the end of the year, Romeo Langford's going to be better than Aaron Nesmith, he'll have more of a chance to start, I would never be like, oh, you're crazy. Because I think Romeo has shown at times that, wow, he has gotten a little bit better. He's worked in the jumper, even though it didn't look great last night. But I will say, he just seems like, when I say consistency was the issue for Nesmith, If I'm saying that's an issue for Neesmith, then it's like you better put that in all caps, bold, make the font bigger, and type out inconsistency for Romeo Langford, because he hasn't been as consistent even to what he's good at either. Like Aaron Neesmith arguably has been a better defender in his NBA career than Romeo Langford, and that's not how it should have gone down, right? Like Romeo Langford's supposed to be that lanky, long defender. So I think that he's way further away. I think that he's going to be battling for sort of that maybe 10-9 slot in the rotation. And I think Neesmith is working his way into like the 7th man. Like I think that he's taken a big step up. And on top of that, I know I'm talking for forever here, but on top of that, like Aaron Neesmith, what he does fills way more of a void for the Celtics team than what Romeo Langford does. So if you like the one thing
in terms of, you just mean in terms of like a shooter, a spot of shooter.
Right. His like, his, hey, I'm going to put it on the fridge, gold star, what I'm good at or what he's supposed to be good at fills way more of a void than Romeo Langford does. And that's, I guess that whole take is way more sort of, I guess, gassing up Aaron Neesmith than it is saying Romeo Langford doesn't have a chance of doing it. I just think Aaron Neesmith is ready and Romeo's not totally yet. I know Birkin's not going to love that one though.
Well, here's the thing, and Birkin, plug your ears or whatever. I don't know, you're not going to hear this, but I mean, what is Romeo Langford's ceiling? He's athletic, wing, can slash a little bit, can defend a little bit, his threes developing, maybe he can be okay from out there and, play make a little bit. Oh, who does that sound like? Josh Richardson. So they bring Josh Richardson in, and that was Romeo's role. That was Romeo's role to have to develop into, and he didn't. So the Celtics said, we're going to get someone else to come in and do it.
Do you mean ceiling this year? Because I meant
ceiling overall, probably.
I do still think, like, and this is obviously like fantasy land, everything works out. Romeo Langford sort of has that vibe of he's got the long arms for his, body, relatively speaking. He does have that bounce when he jumps. Like, he does have a ridiculously high ceiling. It's just a matter of, like, when we talk ceilings, are we saying, like, realistic ceiling? Or are we talking, like, like, if things were to, like, align for him, I think that he could be fantastic. But I think I'm more in the trenches of, well, will they ever align, right? Like,
right.
So maybe... Well, you're saying like his Josh Richardson ceiling, that is like the realistic ceiling, right?
Yeah. I think realistically that his ceiling is what Josh Richardson has been over the course of the year. He's a really good player, a starter, led the Heat in scoring a few years ago. It's a really high-end ceiling, I think, for a guy like Langford. So I think might even be being a little generous with that comparison. But, so that's what Romeo Langford's supposed to be, and the Celtics now have someone else who does those things. They don't have someone else that does the things that Neesmith does, as you said. I will say, Romeo in the first few games, you could have argued through the first 2 games that he played better than Neesmith. He's the thing about defending. I think that Romeo. To me, he's defended better than Neesmith. I think Neesmith's a good hustle guy, but as an all-ball defender, I'm less sold on it. So we can disagree on that, but.
I think I agree with that. Games. I was saying almost in the way that Romeo should be head and shoulders above Neesmith. It's like you're not missing Romeo's defense really when Neesmith's did I say Romeo Neesmith? Romeo, you're not missing Romeo. Oh no, Romeo's defense. Wow, Romeo's defense. You're not missing that when Neesmith's out there.
Well, here's the thing too about Romeo is like the points about his defense. Like we said a lot, like Romeo's playing some good defense out there. When we said that. When he was like 0 for 5, and we were like, well, what's a positive we can pull from Romeo Langford? He's playing okay defense, and we contested that shot pretty well. So, regardless of that, so the first 2 games, Neesmith was, Langford was pretty good. He hit the game winner against the Magic. He was 2 for 6 from the floor, which isn't great, but he was 2 for 2 from 3. The next game he comes out, 5 for 6 from the floor, 3 for 4 from 3, 13 points. He was outscoring Neesmith through the first 2 games. So you looked at that and said, great. And then these questions people are asking about Romeo and Neesmith and who do you start and all this stuff, they start to make a little more sense. So then Romeo does start the 3rd preseason game. He starts that game. 5 for 13, 0 for 3 from deep. Like kind of a step back. Yeah. Meanwhile, Neesmith,
and a big air ball from deep too. Yeah. That air ball could have counted as 3 misses.
Right. And I should have said that Romeo actually started the 2nd game. Both of them started the 3rd game. Now it's time to see who's better. And then Romeo goes 5 for 13, 0 for 3 from 3 deep. And Neesmith, meanwhile, 8 for 16, leads the team in field goal attempts, and is still efficient. With that, 8 of 16, 4 of 8, and you're not going to need him to shoot the shots to the level of difficulty that he did in that game. He's not going to be the first, second option. He's going to be the fifth, and what kind of looks does he get like that? So I think that's a reason to be excited about Neesmith. Scores 23, and the script is totally flipped from preseason. Now as Romeo is trending upward, and you start to think, well, is there something there? Is there maybe a battle there that we didn't think was going to happen? No. I mean, Neesmith has clearly overtaken Romeo Langford right now in the Celtics rotation, head and shoulders above him. And it's hard for me to imagine Romeo ever regaining that ground. It's going to be really tough.
Well, especially when it was he can shoot. And like I said, that air ball, literally that one air ball said, okay, maybe he can't. Maybe those 2 games were a little bit of a fluke here. Nah, he can't. Maybe Romeo Langford can't shoot. And Aaron Neesmith, he was supposed to be able to shoot, right? And he started to shoot. But if you draft a guy as a shooter, odds are he's going to end up being somewhat of a shooter. He might not be a great shooter or anything like that, but you still know essentially what you're trying to get out of him. Romeo, you want the defense, and you're right in the sense of okay, he was playing terrible offense, so then everyone was like, but he's playing good defense. It's almost like a cop-out. It's even if they both play pretty damn badly, I'm still being okay, well, I'll take the guy that maybe can make the 3. Maybe they both suck at everything, but Aaron Neesmith can be a potential shooter, then that's where I'm swinging the bat. I'm going for him.
It's Gear. I love your question about Grant, but we're running out of time. We're already over the hour, so we're gonna have
Be
to
Smooth in the chat. Shout out to Be Smooth.
Birkin saying we'll be eating crow is on the menu. Birkin, you're gonna owe us a dinner, and it's not gonna be crow. We're gonna be eating steaks. So we're gonna be eating Birkin once we're right about Josh Richardson saying he's gonna be at the bottom of the bench in a month. Wongy in the chat too. It's up to Wongy. A shout out to everybody that came out today. Last thing we'll get to, because somebody mentioned it at the beginning. I think it might have even been Birkin, and it was something we did want to touch on really quickly. We're not going to get to the Pritchard thing, although I am excited for Masked Pritchard. I don't know if you share my sentiment for being excited about Masked Pritchard, but that's going to be fun to see when that comes around. But Birkin, I think, was the one that wanted us to talk about Kyrie Irving and the Kyrie Irving situation. He said talk about Kyrie and Ben, I think, a little bit. But we'll just talk about the Kyrie Irving thing real quick, Ev, because I just want to get your thoughts on it, because basically this whole thing plays out where Kyrie Irving, he has this weird vaccination thing. He's not practicing with the Nets, and then he does practice for a day or two, and then he can't anymore, and he's not playing home games or against the Knicks or the Warriors, but he's still going to play for them on some away games, and you're thinking, what's going on? And then eventually the Nets just come out and say, he's not playing for us until the status changes, and we're not going to offer him an extension. I mean, what's going on here right now? What do you make of this drama with Kyrie Irving? And
who
would have guessed drama surrounding Kyrie Irving around every little corner? But
right, that's the direction I would take it, and to almost put aside the vaccination, talk. This to me. And this sounds, and I'm swear to God, I'm not making light of, the vaccination or making light of COVID, but if COVID weren't a thing and vaccinations weren't a thing, I have a feeling Kyrie would have found something to make this about. It doesn't matter to me. So how he's saying okay, I'm not going to get the vaccine. And then that's sort of, I guess, the contrarian view in the NBA world and whatnot right now.
Right.
If it was flipped and it was oh, no one's getting it, Kyrie be, I feel the first one in line to get it, because he and to me, and again, I'm not making light at COVID or the vaccine, but Kyrie specifically is always striking me as what can I do to get myself in the news, cause headlines and whatnot, and you want to get the vaccine, you don't want to get the vaccine, I'm fine with that. But it just happens that it's Kyrie Irving leading the charge, and to me, that seems it's tainting the message or anything like that. It's to me, he would have found something. He would be oh, well, I don't like that the Brooklyn Nets have the colors black and white. What are you going to do about that? And it's
you can't have that. No, you can't have that. This is what I'll say, and I won't say anything about, all the stuff you just went into. I'll just say this. If the Nets, and I said this a few days ago, I tweeted out, but I want to say it here too. If the Nets don't win a championship, and their current incarnation, this current version of the Nets with Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. And if it's just James Harden and Kevin Durant, fine, we'll count the same. But if the Nets don't win a championship with Kevin Durant in this stretch, it's the greatest failure in the history of team sports. All team,
Wow.
go back 100 years, any sport, I don't care what it is. Would be a disaster. Like, this team should have walked to a championship last year. They should have moonwalked to a championship last year. They should this year. And the fact that they keep getting in their own way, it's disgraceful. It's embarrassing, honestly. Like, when they had just Kyrie and Durant supposed to go to the NBA Finals, then they got James Harden, and it was like, it's not even fair. Then Blake Griffin joins on, and LaMarcus Aldridge, and it's like, well, not that those guys are all-stars anymore, but it's just ridiculous. They were loaded, and they lost in the second round. And that's because of injuries. Okay, whatever. Injuries you can accept. Now Kyrie Irving won't do what he has to do to get on the floor. And what's your team going to be this year? What are you going to do with that asset, and what's happening? If this thing falls apart, and it's because of Kyrie Irving, I think that Celtics fans had a certain view of Kyrie when he left.
Yeah.
And people, when they heard how Celtics fans felt about Kyrie, they said it was sour grapes, and they dismissed it, and it's just because he left your team and you're mad about it and all this stuff. And if Kyrie goes to and doesn't play this season because he won't get vaccinated, and he continues to have more incidents like this, the book on his NBA career, it's not going to be good. Like, it's not. He's going to go from being this kind of player next to LeBron that people thought was like Kobe to his Shaq, to a guy that people look at and say a little bit of like, this guy left a lot on the table in terms of his NBA career. And
yeah, he'll be like a what could have been type of thing, because
a little bit, and it's going to be weird because it's like there are guys like that, like Penny Hardaway or Derrick Rose, but they didn't reach their potential because of injuries. Kyrie didn't, because he kind of got in his own way. What could the Celtics have been if Kyrie was a better leader?
Yeah.
If when they had Gordon Hayward and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, if he wasn't like, well, I'm going to be me, and I'm going to be Kyrie, and I need to get my points. What if he just set people up, and he took kind of a step back scoring-wise, 18, 19 points per game, and was just a good teammate? What if he did that? Could they have won a few championships? Like, did he blow an opportunity?
I'm sure they definitely could have.
Now he's with Durant, and he's with James Harden, and you could easily win a championship. But are you going to give that up because of other stuff? And look, if other stuff's more important to Kyrie, then whatever. It's up to you. But if we're just talking about basketball here and basketball analysis, people are going to like look back on this guy's career and say he could have done so much more with his career. So many more championships. What else not? He left a lot of meat on that bone. And hey, he might be morally right for it. Maybe we're all the crazy ones who care too much about basketball. But when we're talking about NBA talk, which goes around a lot, and people talk about this stuff, people are not gonna look back on his time fondly. He's gonna be someone that ultimately could have achieved more.
And I mean, I agree. I think that Hobie looked back, like, to me, like, and I've thought it for like a couple of years. I think I've even said it when we've done stuff together before. It's like, I feel like Kyrie doesn't like basketball. Like, he wants to be an influential person and whatnot more and more, which that's totally fine. But stop, tickling your team's balls, being like, hey, like, I'm gonna like basketball, and then all of a sudden you're not. You know what I mean? Like either pick a side. Do you want to be a basketball player, or do you want to be a person that can sort of influence society and whatnot? Fine, you want to do that. I'm not gonna hate that, but it's the sort of the focus needs to be there. But back to like the Nets thing, I will say, and I get that it probably all comes down to Kyrie because he's sort of the seemingly the wayward child here, I guess. But the two guys that are also superstars on that team also have their sort of like issues and I guess downfalls and flaws as well. You know what I mean? Like, you have a James Harden, a guy that's renowned for not being able to win huge games and stuff like that. And you have Kevin Durant, who is on Twitter like making burner, like it is what we kind of thought would be the dumpster fire. I have a feeling that's still happening, but I will also say I think that Durant and Harden can win a championship without like easily too. So I don't even know if it's all like Kyrie's just obviously the one that's sort of like, oh, it's his fault right now. But it takes, in this case, I think 3 to tango. But Kyrie's like the lead tangoer right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, if they're going to be a disappointment and a failure, it will come come on all of them, and that's a problem. But it's like it's Kyrie's sort of heading up that charge. But like, I don't even know if they don't win a championship and those guys go their own separate ways, I think people will still be in their own right to be like, oh, well, Durant didn't do it, Harden didn't do it, and then you can say, well, Kyrie sure as hell didn't do it. But maybe a little bit more emphasis on Kyrie, but still, it's like, I know it sounds so corny, but that'll be a team effort to make that a failure because they still have two absolute superstars. And if those guys can't get it done, then geez.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming out for this episode, the inaugural episode, first episode of the Celtics Power Hour. We went 70 minutes just because we love you guys so much. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Stick around.
Birkin, even though we agree, we love you too. Birkin was very active in the chat.
We love Birkin. We
love everyone in the chat, though.
We'll see Birkin if maybe we'll buy you a Josh Richardson jersey this season. Who knows? If you keep showing up to the streams. All right. Well, thank you guys so much again for coming out. Hit the subscribe button. I'm sure we'll have this on Apple Podcasts too. So go over there and check it out as well. And just thank you guys always for coming out and supporting the stream, everything like that. Share it around if you can. And thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time for the next episode.